Dr. Soma, you've mentioned hope, and hope is obviously so important and yet so intangible. You can't bottle it up or package it like you could, say, a workbook or an e learning course. Where do you see hope fitting into trainings, into trauma informed content and resilience building?
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about content to share through the newsletter and content and resources to share with parents and educators that would help both themselves and the students or the children that they work with. And where I kept landing for these past couple of months was the whole idea of we have to build resilience. We have to build resilience. We have to make sure kids are feeling connected. They're paying attention to what they're good at. They're engaging in activities that make them feel better. Um, and then it dawned on me that even those very resilience building experiences and activities may be really hard right now. So I went sort of digging back in my resilience research, and I kept coming across the whole idea of, in order to be able to engage in and teach and provide experiences of resilience, we have to sort of have an on ramp to get there. So this whole notion of hope, and like you said, hope is it's sort of a mindset. It's a mindset to get you into thinking there is something I can do about all the things that are happening in my life. But in order to start embarking on doing those things, to kind of get the momentum going, I have to be hopeful that they will even work. So, for example, we've heard so much about the importance of socialization and connection during this time. And, I know we talked at the summer conference about the difference between physical distancing and social distancing, right? So we heard a lot about social distancing, but what we want to remind people that of, it's important to have social connections, even if they aren't physically close. So that whole idea of reaching out, connecting with your colleagues, connecting with parents or other parents who are in the same boat, having students reach out to their peers, during the course of the school or work week is so important for resilience building and making kids feel connected to school and community. But the idea of having them do that is really difficult if they don't even think that it's going to work or make them feel any better. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about the idea that hope is sort of this on ramp, or it's the driver to the overall goal of achieving resilience or achieving experiences or engaging in activities that make us feel resilient. So kind of to back up a little bit, where we started at the beginning of the Back to School series was with the Circle of Courage and talking about the 4 universal needs, which are really like the 4 main characteristics that people need to make them resilient. It's feeling a sense of belonging, feeling like you're good at something, feeling like you have control or choice, the ability to self-regulate, and then the last one, generosity, the ability to feel like you matter, you can provide meaning to other people's lives based upon your own strengths and resources. And what I kept thinking is, we need almost a way to get us sort of primed to begin engaging in those different activities. So hope became a nice place for us to start, and that's why I really thought that during this session we could talk a lot about it. Not to mention, there is so much great research that supports hope as a concept and as a mindset. So I didn't want you just to think that I was pulling this out just because I thought it would be a good idea to talk about being hopeful. The shift to hope as a mindset is scientifically proven to provide a lot of overall well-being for both children and for adolescents. The other thing that I've been trying to do in the last couple of weekly newsletters and in our conversations is, how can I provide information for you as an adult, whether you're a parent or an educator or a practitioner, that will not just allow you to help the children or students that you're working with, but will help you at the same time, because I know that time is very limited. So anything that we can do to sort of double dip, hey, if I'm engaging in this activity with my child or with my student, hey, I get to engage in it too, and then I get to reap those benefits.
So, Dr. Soma, in your most recent newsletter, October 20th, I believe, you talk about hope not only from the theoretical sense, but also provide activities that we can do in the classroom to help bolster those thoughts of hope. I'm a former educator, and I see in my classrooms, I saw in my classrooms, those students who got it, who were dialed in and could participate. But I also saw those students for whatever reason that maybe had the cold shoulder, who couldn't bring themselves to find that hope that we've been talking about. And I really appreciate you providing these activities to bolster hope rather than just the idea of it. Instead of just trying to rally the troops and say, we can do it, you give tangible activities that aren't surrounded in hope. Hey, we're going to build hope, so we're going to do this activity. It's reflecting on those positives in our lives. And to me, that is such a powerful idea. Can you, first off, I hope I'm correct there. I hope I've assessed your approach there correctly. And if so, can you talk in detail about these activities to us, please?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So what it reminds me of is a lot about what we teach in our courses. So we know that stress and trauma are not logical or reasonable responses. So, for example, a child might still feel very unsafe weeks after a bad thing has happened. So, even though they know that they're physically safe and that the harm is no longer near them, their body is still experiencing that lack of safety or that distrust or that overwhelming feeling. So it's sort of the same thing with the mindset of hope. We can't just say we all need to be hopeful and think that the switch is going to flip. We have to actually experience hope in our bodies to be able to shift into that mindset. So the examples that I gave are examples of things that can happen that we can do as caring adults, as parents, or as educators, and what you can sort of model for students and your children to do on their own so that they begin to experience these different new opportunities that then will make them in turn sort of be more hopeful. So I'll give you an example. So if we are demonstrating kindness and care and appreciation, despite the fact that, everything is kind of going haywire, whether that be on our Zoom call or with certain students in our classroom, or a parent who's frustrated and angry with work, or a student who's having difficulty learning how to do algebra via the computer. It shows kids that even though all of these crummy, hard things are happening, this teacher or this parent is still able to say, it's okay, we're going to get through this, we've got this. And it kind of goes back to more science. And there's some science that talks about mirror neurons, and mirror neurons are neurons in our body, or, that's sort of a fancy way to say brain cells in our body that pick up on other people's chemistry. So we've all been in a situation where we are with somebody and they're in a terrible mood, complaining and negative, and the sky is falling and nothing good is ever going to happen again. And we might leave the company of that person or hang up the phone with that person and start to kind of feel that in our own body, right? We kind of feel like, oh, I kind of feel down in the dumps, or like I'm not feeling optimistic about anything. And on the flip side, we can be with somebody who's really upbeat and positive and loving, maybe calm, even in a crisis. And we begin to take on that same chemistry that they have. So the same thing happens with these demonstrations of different strategies that will sort of elicit this push towards a hopeful mindset. So the more we're demonstrating love, showing kindness and care, just appreciating the kids in our class and noticing them, or appreciating our kids at home and noticing them, is going to make them feel more hopeful that everything is going to be okay, right? You're not going to say everything's going to be okay, but you're showing them that this is really hard. It's a really hard time, but it's okay. So, hey, maybe only 25 out of my 28 kids have turned their Zoom camera on during my online session. And what I have to do is I have to appreciate that those 2 kids turned on their camera and I got to see their beautiful faces for a couple of minutes during my session. I know one of the biggest struggles that teachers are having is they're saying, you keep telling me to connect with kids and none of these kids will turn their darn cameras on. Teachers feel like they're talking into an abyss. Then you've got these middle school kids who are so self, what's the word I'm looking for, Matt? Just self, I don't know, can't think of the word, self-conscious, and they don't want to turn their cameras on, right? So noticing the things that they're doing. I was talking to one mom who has a daughter who every time she's got to get onto her afternoon Zoom meeting after they do like an outdoor recess in their own backyard, she has a really hard time getting on that Zoom meeting. And how we reframed it was, Lucia is able to get on to all 4 of her morning Zoom meetings without any difficulty. So, let's look at those as being a win. And the one that we struggle with in the afternoon, we're going to work through, but that's okay. The next one is just sort of showing grace for all that we're going through. So, I know that I've been doing some virtual training, and the way I start every virtual training is to say, hey, we are virtual. You will probably hear my dog bark. My mailman might come and knock on the door. My kids might ask me questions. We might have technical difficulty. Let's all be easy on each other. So it's definitely a time to make sure that we're putting expectations into realistic parameters, and making sure that we're giving people the okay to just say, like, this is hard and I don't have it all together today. I need some time, or I need a second chance. So just really encouraging those successes, the small wins, giving people a little bit of grace, and then letting yourself and your students and your kids know that even with all of the devastation and the loss and the grief and the unpredictability, the racial pandemic, the COVID pandemic, everything that's going on in the world today, it is still okay. And we definitely deserve to have happiness and have fun. And I think where I learned this was, 20 years ago when I started doing work in trauma and loss, and a mentor telling me that one of the most important things you can tell a child is that even though there's a death, it's okay to have fun and laugh. It doesn't mean that you're not being sensitive to all that's happening around you in the world. So knowing that it's important to enjoy, to laugh things off, to be okay with silliness, and even though there's hard things going on and there's frustrations, that's going to really help us say, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together without having to say those exact words.